Welcome to this week's episode of A Tale of Two Scribes. I'm the host, Eric Bishop. This is a place where interesting people come to share their stories. I hope you'll support tonight's guest. As for myself, I'm a father, author, travel enthusiast, and lover of the outdoors. If you'd like to see some of my creative works, my novels, please go to my website, ericpbishop.com. Thanks for joining us tonight, and enjoy the journey. Welcome to another episode of A Tale of Two Scribes. Tonight I am super excited to have L.A. Chandlar on the program. Hello.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So to my guests, this is 2026, and there might be a little bias going on here because my first guest of 2026 was my favorite author, male author, Brad Meltzer,
Yeah.
University of Michigan. Now I'm following it up with my favorite female author, because I can have a favorite male. I got favorite kids. I have a
Of
favorite
course.
son and daughter, so I can have favorites in life. Now
Yes.
my favorite female author's on, and what University of Michigan again?
I know. It's a
What's up with that?
thing.
It must be a good
Great
school to
school.
spit out both of you. I don't
Pretty
know.
good. Pretty good school.
Well, our backstory goes a little bit back. I was trying to think about it earlier. I'm like, what year did I meet? And I still couldn't come up. I didn't look at pictures. That's my cheat way. My kids always complain I take too many pictures, but that's the
Mhm.
way I can be like, oh, that's when that happened. Oh, yeah, I just scroll through my camera roll. So I didn't scroll through the camera roll.
Hmm.
And I can't remember if it was 2017 or 2018 I met you. That's
Seven-
terrible. Was
17.
it
And
was it
the only reason
17?
I remember is because it was my first Thriller Fest and I
Oh,
was a
mine
debut
too.
author. And then you didn't know I was a debut author right away because I didn't need a little pin for it. And then later on, you're like, you didn't tell me you're a debut author. And I'm like, well, I didn't realize it was a big thing at the time, but now I do. And
Well,
yeah, I remember.
and the
Yeah.
person that introduced us, so I have multiple shelves of books around me, and I have kind of like, again, my favorites. I'm very particular in like how I'm going to organize these things. So
We're
you're over here. There's
nice.
your, and I got a fourth book to add. Thank you for
Love
to the
it.
library, so that will go there. Then we have Brad Meltzer, and he's actually hidden a little bit behind this, but we have Adam Hamdy back behind
Of
the book.
course. Of course.
So that's how I met you. So we
Yeah.
were up at the Hyatt at the Grand Central
Mhm.
at the bar up there one night, and I saw Adam, and I went over. I met Adam the day before or whatever it was, and he's like, "Eric, you need to meet my friend Lori." So we have
He's
Adam
great.
to thank.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to this day, you're probably the two authors that I've kept in contact with since 2017. I've talked with other people, obviously, over the years, but some kind of have come into the picture, out of the picture. I just I did a WhatsApp call, FaceTime type WhatsApp call with Adam like within the last month, and he's trying to get me to come out to Mauritius, and I'm like, dude, it's like a 20, I want to come, but it's like a
Yeah.
$2,600 flight out there. It's like, but he's like, you got a free place to stay. The kids are back in England with school, so I got this house to myself when I'm here. I'm like,
Wow.
this sounds really nice, but I need to sell some more books to be able to fly out to Mauritius.
Just a few more.
I did tell him I found a cheap flight to Dubai. I said, maybe just meet me in Dubai. I can get to Dubai for like 650 out of Charlotte. So, a weekend in Dubai doesn't sound bad. So, we'll see.
Absolutely.
But very grateful to Adam, very grateful to you. You've both been, and Brad, all three of you, honestly, have been super supportive. And I think that's the one thing you don't realize getting into the writing gig is that you kind of think it's going to be a competition probably in your head
Mhm.
because most of
Mhm.
your life has been a competition, job wise or
Mhm.
school. You're trying to compete, get good grades, get a good job. And I know competition happens. I'm not ignorant to the writing thing, but by and far, the community is so wonderful. And
Mhm.
even if you're one of the top echelon people, the Brad Meltzers, you still give time and give advice to nobodies, which is awfully, awfully cool.
Yeah, the crime writing community is amazing. I feel like they're very generous. In the first conferences I would go to and having,
Mhm.
like you said, big names, people that have all of their bread and butter and they have everything they need and still being really kind and supportive and giving you their
Yeah,
card and offering a blurb so yeah, I think it's been great.
yeah, absolutely. Um, let's take a whole step back and let's figure out why University of Michigan, why New York, why writing, and I know we got a little rock star little sliver we can throw in there as well. So
The guitar.
how did we get to this point in life? Yes, I love the guitar behind you. So
Thank you.
um, where did it all start?
Well, I went to the University of Michigan. I grew up outside Detroit. So, Michigan was somewhere I had always really wanted to go. I liked the campus a lot. I liked the offering, the different, all the different kinds of students, the diversity, and of course, the education was wonderful. So, I went there. I did double majored in public relations and English. And I always liked writing. I also liked speaking. I did not really have in mind novel writing though at the
Mhm.
time. I'm a big reader. I've always loved reading. But that took a lot longer for me to figure out. I ended up working at General Motors right out of college
Okay.
for public relations. Enjoyed it. I got to work at the historic General Motors building in downtown Detroit, and
Hmm.
that was amazing. I love that. And the people were great. But it also wasn't really what I was looking for. I was definitely interested in something a little more creative. My husband and I at the time, he also was feeling the same thing. And we started to work for a nonprofit where we would be able to tour with his rock band at the time. And so that way we'd be able to do rock. And I managed the whole band with my PR stuff. It was a
Hmm.
blast. I learned how to run sound and really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
To this day, I still love it. I say it's painting with sound. I love balancing everything out. It's very fun.
Hmm.
Um, and then also that way we could do a lot of charity. We felt like we weren't just playing bar gigs and doing that whole circuit. We were actually giving back. So we played at a whole bunch of charity concerts, especially for the military, which
Okay.
was a blast and a half. My favorite tour I took us on, we went to Hawaii and played at the University of Hawaii and Pearl Harbor. It was great.
Pretty amazing.
So we did that for several years. Then we really wanted to move. That nonprofit was based in Indianapolis. So we lived
Okay.
there for about 5 years and then decided we wanted to move somewhere that was a little bit more of a cultural hub. So we're looking at Los Angeles, London, or New York.
Hmm.
And then we got a job opportunity in New York, and we decided that we were going to take it because we
Hmm.
didn't have kids at the time. We're
Hmm.
like, we like it or hate it. We can always move back. The
Yeah.
suburbs were still waiting.
Right.
And we had a lot of flack for it, actually, because a lot of people felt like the number one response we got is, how can you move there? It's where Law and Order's filmed. I'm like, there's a lot of other things going on there besides Law and Order. It's okay. So
True.
it's like, but I think everybody has in mind Times Square
Yeah.
only and not the residential areas and the schools and all that.
Mhm.
So we moved and fell in love with it. And we've been there with 24 years. And it was actually there. We moved directly after 9/11.
Okay.
I mean, directly after. We were
Mhm.
flying there on 9/11 to sign our lease agreement.
Mhm.
So we ended up being stayed in Detroit, but we still moved only 2 weeks later.
Mhm.
So let me tell you, getting a moving truck into Manhattan under 2 weeks after 9/11 was a feat and a half. Like
Wasn't
we
real.
worked with the FBI. It was a crazy.
Yeah.
However, it was
You're
a
still on
real,
some watch lists, I'm sure.
yeah, probably. Probably. We learned so much. The city was it was such a hurting time for the city.
Mhm.
But then when we were moving in, Brian was inside with the movers. I was outside just on the sidewalk, working with the movers then. And we had no less than 6 neighbors come by and they're like, "Oh, are you moving out?" We're like, "No, we're moving in." And they're like, "Oh, welcome to the city."
Yeah.
It's really great. And we saw this side of the city of this time that was broken and
Mhm.
difficult, but yet art was taking off, going crazy.
Yeah.
And the humor, like a lot of the comedians were doing wonderful numbers that were reminding us of the goodness of humanity. It was a
Mhm.
really interesting time. And I happened to pick up a book on Fiorello LaGuardia, who was a
Mhm.
mayor in the 1930s during the
Mhm.
Depression. And I'm not even a huge biography reader. It was just sort of kismet, I think, that I picked it up. And I started looking at it and I realized there was so much in common with the 1930s and the Depression as
Yeah.
there was in this 9/11 era, where the
Mhm.
city was broken, but there was so much life going on, so much art taking off. All of our favorite buildings that are Art Deco buildings, like the Chrysler Building, Rockefeller Center, Radio City Music Hall, the Empire State Building, they all went up after the stock market crash.
Mhm.
I always thought they went up in the Great Gatsby era
Right.
before then, but they didn't. And it was because of that building that it really brought all the buildings, building them, went brought the city back to life after a
Yeah.
time of total silence. And that is all what inspired this series of books. I started to realize I wanted to tell that side of the story to the 30s. You know, LaGuardia himself was a spitfire. He's 5'2", double minority, half Jewish, half Italian. And every time I'm in an interview, I always say there's not enough storm superlatives to use for him. And I
Mhm.
just read there's actually a really great section on him on Sunday Morning News this past weekend, and they were talking about what a dynamo he was. And there's always like took the city by storm, and I'm like, see, like you couldn't follow him fast enough. It was great. So,
I
and
like that.
so funny. He did a lot of really funny stunts. Loved a good photo opportunity even when they didn't have that term yet.
Mhm.
He would have been fantastic on social media.
I was gonna
So,
say, yeah, he'd
right,
love it now.
hey, totally would. So I was like, I love that life and that vitality, that, and I've always been um inspired by beauty out of adversity. And I felt
Mhm.
like this is such a great time. And my protagonist is Fiorella LaGuardia's aide. And that was the other thing. There were so many women in the workforce doing
Mhm.
incredible things. And
Yeah.
it was before World War II when all the Rosie the Riveter women,
Right.
came and, stood up for the country. It was before then. So I was like, this is good stuff. This is stuff that I want to talk about. So anyway, I developed the whole characters and the stories behind that with that theme.
From just moving there and then being exposed. Yeah, I think New York's one of those places that most people that have negative connotations, obviously, I think have it wrong. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of them have never visited. So they're just working off someone that went that had a bad trip that, a cabbie didn't speak English or didn't speak kind to them or whatever their issue was. And me growing up in Connecticut and coming down the city, not all the time, but frequently enough that I'm comfortable there and have been for years, that people would tell me like, "Oh, New York, why would you go there?" And I'm like, "Why wouldn't you go there?" And
Right.
of course, they've always said to me too, most people, well, "Would you live there?" I'd live next to Bono in the penthouse across from him. That one I would definitely do. I'd be okay with that. There's other places I wouldn't want to live in New York, but if I could have a place there and go there for the fun stuff and then jet back to my ranch in Montana during, Monday through Friday,
Well, sure. If we're talking sky's the limit, sure.
Lori, I'm in publishing. Come on, what in the world? Do they not give you the suitcase of cash every Monday morning when you open up your laptop?
It was surprising. I think I was shocked by the walking culture of it. We lived in a really
Yeah.
different residential area. So our kids were born and raised there. And what I
Hmm.
was shocked with, because I grew up in the suburbs and outside Detroit, so everything is car culture.
Yeah.
So what I didn't realize was what a community that is. So
Hmm.
our public school kids would all walk to school together in the morning, and
Yeah.
they shut down the street, and then that's where all the parents and the grandparents and the nannies and
Hmm.
everybody drops the kids off and picks them up. So we were seeing people all the time and we're just walking and chatting on our way to and from school. It was
Hmm.
crazy. It was like a little small town.
Yep.
You usually are so separated by the car line at school or
Right.
the bus. I had no idea. And then running into people constantly, especially raising kids in that same neighborhood. They
Hmm.
would go all over the parks and whatever, and especially in middle school. And, the parents are always running into each other and the kids. And so it felt like it was the smallest, best community I've ever lived in. And yet here
Hmm.
it's in the middle of Gotham.
Yeah.
It was just really surprising to me, but I really love that aspect of New York. And I don't think you always get it when you're just doing touristy stuff. Of
Right.
course, like
Yeah.
anywhere you would go to live, that's, to be expected.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that's where people's misconception happens because I cannot recall a negative experience I had in New York. And I've been to a lot of the touristy places. I've been off the beaten path as well and never had an issue where someone was, horribly rude to me. I mean, I've had rude people to me at Walmart, 15 minutes from my house.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
Well, Walmart gets some interesting characters
Sure.
sometimes, especially in the South. So you got,
Yeah.
alcohol and a few other things in Walmart. You put those together, woo, it makes the local news maybe. But no, New York to me, when people would say something like, "Well, it's not very friendly," and I'm like, "Yeah, no, I don't agree with
Yeah.
maybe
Well,
your
they're
experience has
assertive.
been something different from mine, but
Right. Well, and they're assertive. I mean, that was the difference too. I felt like you
right, absolutely,
really learn a lot
yeah,
because we're tired. Like every time I tell people that come that are friends who go do touristy things, I'm like, every time I would go before living there, I'm tired and hungry from
hmm
doing all the touristy walking around stuff, all the stimulus around the city. And so whenever I'd be going to work and, on the subway or the buses, you always had to plan 30 minutes to 45 minutes to get anywhere.
hmm
And you're working hard. And so I think people kind of cut to the chase, with whether they're going to be direct or not. But
yeah.
there's also a lot of really, I mean, anybody who stops and asks for directions, there's always 10 people. New Yorkers love to give directions. And so, and my favorite time was my husband and I were on and waiting at a subway platform. And this kid goes up, he had to be all of 19. And he walks up to my husband. He's like, I'm on my way to a job interview and I don't know how to tie a tie. Can you tie my tie?
That's
My husband's
hilarious.
like, sure. And then he goes to this before we had kids. We didn't know how to tie a tie on someone else. He's like, here, give me your tie. And he's like, he had to do it
Put
on
it on, tie it
himself
on himself.
and put it on him. It was so great. But I mean, that kind of stuff happens all the time. So yeah.
I
Yeah.
went to private school for several years, so I had to have a tie on every day. I can still to this day, and every now and then Bruce, I remember Bruce had to put his first on. He's like, "You help me with a tie," and I'm like, "I don't even have to think. I don't even have to open my eyes. I can tie that
Automatic.
thing."
Automatic.
I put one on about every 3 or 4 years now because it's like I think I did this enough in my life. So, I'll wear a sweatshirt or a t-shirt. Fortunate that I work from home as well. So unless I'm
Very
traveling for work, majority of time, I would joke with you, I've got pants on today. It's like, hey, look, I got a podcast. I know.
fancy.
No. I go for walks in the morning, so I actually have to get dressed and showered in the morning. It's like, okay, I go for my morning walk before I start my corporate life. So
Sure.
but yeah, no, I think it's neat. And I think for, again, having boys living in the city, I think you give them such a unique upbringing that so many people in the country, A, don't get to experience, and I think B, even then fear. Because even now with my own kids, and I'll talk about traveling places, and they'll sometimes they'll kind of be like, "Is that a safe place?" Like I went to Spain back in September.
Mhm.
Lot of reasons for this, but I didn't tell anyone until the day before. So I actually picked my daughter up from school, and we were talking about the weekend because she was going back to be with her mom for the next 5 days or whatever. And I
Mhm.
said, "Hey, I'll try to call you tomorrow, but the time's gonna be a little hard." She goes, "Time for what?" I said, "Well, I'll be in Spain." "No, you're not." And I swear I had actually told her. I had mentioned I was going, but I didn't tell her I actually had booked it.
I
So the
see.
day before, so I actually had to pull up my boarding pass, which I already had at that point. So I was close to taking off. Showed her the boarding pass, and she's like, "What? Why didn't you tell me?" "Oh, sorry. Are you
Mhm.
gonna be safe?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll be fine." I said, "But I've never been there and I don't speak the language, so this one is gonna be a little bit more interesting."
Sure.
So
Sure.
then I tried to be smart about it. So I ended up booking a hotel, a Marriott brand, comfortable with the brand, right across from the train station. So I figured, okay, worst case scenario, I can fly in, take the train. I'm literally at the main train station, walk across the street to the hotel. What can happen in one block? Which, of course, anything can happen in one block, but it was a completely and then within being there in it was only there for 3 days, honestly, but it was so easy. It was
Mm.
actually reminding me of walking around New York.
Mm.
So that was one thing I thought was very interesting about Barcelona, which also parts of it didn't stand out too much because it was like it's just a big city. That's all this is,
Mm.
That's all. It was more when I got away and went to the coast one day and went up the Mediterranean and Tossa de Mar and went inland, and saw some of the cities there that I was kind of like, okay, now this is Spain. This is what I
Mm.
expected Spain to be. So,
Yeah.
but
I
I
can
think part of that is me growing up and visiting the city.
Yeah.
I grew up between New York and Boston. So we were diehard Red Sox fans. Sorry, Yankees. I'd say Mets, but the Mets don't actually exist, do
Please
they?
do
I mean,
that.
and you grew up in Connecticut, you either were a Red Sox fan or you were a Yankees fan. Whichever side you chose, you despise the other side.
Of course.
To this day, if I see a Yankees hat, I'm mellowed in my old age. I couldn't tell you anyone that plays on any of the teams, but I'm kind of still, part of me is a little like tenses a little like I remember them.
It happens. Love them
Se-
right.
Seinfeld made it better for me. Once they brought George Steinbrenner on as a character,
Fair.
then then it was okay because it was so darn funny. At,
Exactly.
I guess the Steinbrenner's expense and the Yankees hiring George Costanza. I mean, what in the world kind of decision would that be? So,
Exactly.
but yeah, so talk to me a little bit about what it was like for from a family perspective of you. I know you mentioned about the community, but just the kind of the doors that opened up for your sons, and then also, your son went into school for music, your oldest son, which is kind of one of those like remarkable things that I think, probably with your husband's influence and
Mhm.
bands and all that, it's kind of neat to see then your children follow in a similar path.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's one of the schools are definitely a huge perk of living in the city. The public schools are wonderful and they have you have to for high school, you have to apply for the public high school. So it's a
Right.
big deal. There are all these there's no in Manhattan, there are no zoned high schools. All the other boroughs, your closest high school is your high
Is your
school
high school,
unless
yeah.
you want to apply to get in. Manhattan, the entire island of Manhattan has no zoned high schools. So it is also stressful because that
Yeah.
means you could be placed anywhere in any of the five boroughs. So
Right.
it's definitely tricky. And but it taught the boys very early on, even for middle school, you do a little bit of that too.
Hmm.
How to look for schools that
Yeah.
interest you, that have your that are that's a good fit for you, and why. Why is this a good fit? Big school, science minded, arts minded, small school. There's a million options. But
Mhm.
for both my kids, the oldest one is a musician, and so we were looking at LaGuardia High School, which is so funny because it was founded by Fiorello LaGuardia at the
Mhm.
very beginning of my first book, The Silver Gun. It's the summer of 1936, and he always believed in art for the schools, and it was the first public art school. He believed that art was for everybody, not
Mhm.
just the wealthy. So before then, the only kids that could go to art school of any kind were if you had the money for it. So
Mhm.
he wanted to change it. He really believed art had such a redemptive value and hopeful value for the city. So he opens this school, and it's the same school that was that Fame
I
TV and
was
music show.
I was about to say that for people that don't know, I remember this fact from our previous
Mhm.
conversation. So,
Yeah.
yes.
And it's so much of it is like it still, in that this
Hmm.
students are so supportive of each other. And it's a big school. There's 600 to 800 kids per grade.
Wow.
So and there's now it's in a different building than it was at the movie. They actually got a bigger building. There's
Hmm.
several floors, and they're so supportive. And the older kid went for saxophone and he focused on jazz. He's now getting a master's at Eastman.
Hmm.
Really incredible musician. And then my younger one was really interested in engineering. The
Hmm.
interesting thing about this LaGuardia, at first it wasn't on the map for us because we were just looking at some of the other science-based schools,
Hmm.
but he's a real hands-on learner. And they
Hmm.
had this whole theater tech department, which we went and took a tour of it. And they have this huge, like, woodworking shop, and they
Hmm.
did some welding and electrical stuff and design or music engineering. And I mean, everything that is these Broadway worthy shows that they put on every year is completely made by the students. So all the set design and everything was wild. So his engineering really took off because he got to do stuff with it. Like, he
Hmm.
had a couple really incredible projects that were ridiculous to figure out. And he'd come home, be like, we got to figure out how to do this one scene in Rent where the subway poles come up from the bottom of the stage and there's no anchor on top and there's people singing and dancing on the like, how are we going to do this? And they figured it out. And oh my God.
Yeah.
So it really was interesting to see how there's just such a variety of students and
Hmm.
ways of learning, and then how supportive they are of each other. It was
Yeah.
wildly supportive. And that was something I don't know if they'll ever find anywhere else. Like, it
Hmm.
was really incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you find that in a lot of schools. So, I think that's a blessing for them to be able to
Mhm.
be here and have that opportunity. Because yes, I think too many people. I mean, too many people get stuck in that mindset of, I just got to get through school. I gotta, almost, the drudge, and there is a drudgery element, obviously, in some classes. If
Oh,
there's
sure.
some requirements that you're not going to enjoy. But again, like with anything in life, I think if your mindset changes, if you find a positive in something, even when there's not a lot of positive, if you can find the positive, I think that helps really mold your mind into a better place than if you're just stuck with the fact of, I don't want to go to school. Okay, well, you're going. So you don't want to go. How are you going to make it a good situation? Okay, you don't want to take that class. Well, do the best you can in that class, and let's try to get you in some different classes next time, or try to find what are your interests. And I think that's so hard. And it's when you have kids that find that interest early, that's cool because then you can really help push them in that direction in the regard of open up other doors for them and stuff. So, which is what I've had with Bruce. You met Bruce. You were our tour guide back, and man, that was
Right.
like that was probably like 6 years ago, maybe seven. I can't remember. That was a long time ago.
Mhm.
You were sweet enough to take
Mhm.
Bruce, Noel, and my mom,
Mhm.
all of us,
Yep.
and get a little tour of New York. And and Bruce from a young age was interested in karate, and then it quickly moved into music in the last multiple years. And same thing. It's like, okay, encourage him to do it, try to find a way it can happen, sit him down and tell him the realities of things. It's like, this is a creative endeavor. So if you think you're going to be playing with Bono in a year or two, let's say we hope we can do that one day, but let's not plan on that. So, but to watch that development, he's off to school. He's starting his second semester end of this week. He's his last week home he's a long break this time. But he's back for his second semester, East Tennessee State, playing bluegrass. He actually just his one of his guitar teachers like won bluegrass guitarist of the year, beat out like Billy Strings this last year. So
Wow.
as good as you can get,
Hmm.
he enjoyed having Bruce so much with the stuff that he picked Bruce for his band that he teaches in class
Nice.
this coming semester for an electric guitar. So he's been sitting here. He brought all his guitar stuff over my house for Christmas break, and sometimes Noel and I will be out and we'll come home, and I can hear the electric guitar in the road. And I'm just like, these neighbors are gonna hate me, coming in and, told him a while ago, you need to learn some Rage Against the Machine. He did. He learned it, and I can hear it from a block away now. So,
That's nice.
but it's
It
cool.
is so nice.
It's fun to see that, and I watch him play now, and I'm just like, I couldn't remember all those notes.
That's something. Yeah, it's
It's something.
incredible.
It's something about that. And of course, I say that to him, and he goes, "Yeah, but I couldn't put the words together the way you do for books." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, it's just a different muscle. You're just
Yeah.
using that muscle in a different way. You're kind of
Talents, absolutely.
yes,
For sure. And such good life lessons, right?
yeah,
You will always have classes or certain aspects of your job that you don't like.
yep,
That's life. And so how do you though work at your best to find the ways where you not only fit the best but thrive? For
right,
sure. Those are all good lessons.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely."
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about Lane Sanders. And before we do that, what was the impetus to say, because obviously we've talked offline over the years, I had probably know all these answers, but for the audience, why be an author? What, wh why scratch that itch? So,
Well, like I was saying, it is a daunting thing when you think about first when I was used to just writing articles and talks and
mm,
stuff, never something the length of a novel. That just seemed like such a huge task to do. And it was daunting for a long time for me until I started taking it into incremental bites because I couldn't get rid of the idea.
yeah,
And when I finally sat down, even in just small bits of time and started writing, the reason I write is because I really, really enjoy it. When I was writing more seriously and consistently, even like I said, really small bits at a time, I got so much life out of it. And I would have people be like, oh, you get so excited when you're talking about it. And I
yeah,
really would. I do. I love developing characters. I think you
hmm
learn so much about yourself. I'm always learning something about writing. And every year it's different. I teach different creative writing classes and even I spoke at a couple of the creative writing classes at LaGuardia recently, and I'm going to go again soon. And, you just are constantly learning. And I like that. I like being able to grow and um, figure out different ways that I can why does this book work for me, even ones that I'm
Mhm.
reading, like why do I like this so much, what's satisfying about this ending that I keep thinking about it, and when I analyze that, it's so fun because you realize, oh, I could put those in my books, like me, meaning
Mhm.
like for me, characters are so essential, and I really love character interplay. Plot is so important to keep you interested and to keep you turning the page, but
Mhm.
for me, the characters are what make me care. And
Mhm.
if I only have plot heavy and that the characters don't have as interesting of a character arc, I might really enjoy the book and the writing,
Mhm.
but my heart won't care about it in the same way. And that's all genres. Like I read all
Yeah.
the genres and I love them all,
Right.
and but it was interesting to even figure that out because in the Hindenburg
Mhm.
Spy, I had a mission where the protagonist was for the first time totally on her own. And she has these teams of people that she works with
Mhm.
usually in the other books, but I can't stick them all on the Hindenburg. So, so, so I got to this one point where I was writing, and I just shared about this in this workshop at LaGuardia. And I was
Mhm.
like, it was such a fascinating study because here I've got ticking time bomb. We all know the thing is going to blow.
Mhm.
I had amazing pacing, short chapters that are getting shorter and shorter as the time winds down. All that was a blast. And I was kind of bored. And I was like, why the heck am I bored? And
Yeah.
I wanted to study it because I'm always telling people, pay attention to that for
Mhm.
what is it about it? And so I started talking about it with a couple friends. And then Brian actually brought up my husband. He's like, well, you always have a lot of interplay between her and the other characters. And there's that
Right.
team dynamic. He goes, is there any way that you could keep doing that without putting them all on the Hindenburg? And I'm like, yeah, actually, I've always have this series is told first person narrative, but I always
Mhm.
have a couple point of view chapters that are a surprise. So
Mhm.
sometimes you're in the head of the villain, sometimes you're in the head of a different character. And
Mhm.
it just gives you this little spark of interest to
Yeah.
not be suddenly first person.
Yep.
So I thought it could be really fun. So number one, the Hindenburg was much more like a cruise ship is today.
Mhm.
It was huge and had all this different stuff on it. So they did have a radio room. So she could get telegrams and stuff across back and forth to her people.
Mhm.
I did that. But then I also toyed with perspective chapters. So them on the ground and them figuring out what's going on, and then her up there.
Yeah.
And it actually created what I was looking for because you
Mhm.
get to see how they all connect and how they all care about each other. But also, it ended up helping the pacing because it got more and more like I said, shorter chapters, and then
Mhm.
they're figuring it out and she's figuring it out, and then you're all waiting for it to like come together to explode. So it really worked well. But I thought it was such a fascinating thing to learn when I'm like, here I've got all this action and exploding bombs and all this kind of fun stuff. But for my heart to be bored, I
Yeah.
was like, that's interesting. And
Right.
it was a good thing to learn and figure out.
Well, you're always changing as you should be at least as an author. Whatever your first book was, whether it got published or not, by the time you get to book five, six, seven, eight, nine, you're not going to be writing the exact same. And maybe there's a couple exceptions out there, some outliers, but I think if you do, you will get bored. So you're always having to try to like, at least for me, I think a lot of authors are trying to challenge themselves. And I've seen some of the big name authors do it, where they'll sometimes have books that go back and forth between past and present. um,
Mm.
I did it this last year with when I ended Breach of Trust, I knew where I was going to start the next book, but I decided to do Supreme Justice, which was a different character's story at the next. I said,
Mhm.
well, am I just like skipping and just letting everyone hang for, a year and a half? And I'm like, no, why don't I put part of what's happening in the book after Breach of Trust, which
Mhm.
is Downfall? Why don't I start putting part of Downfall and it ties into the story, start putting it into Supreme Justice.
Love it.
And now, unfortunately, now I'm having to write Downfall, which I'm working on it every night, and I'm having to remember
That's me.
what did I put in Supreme? So I'm literally opening up Supreme Justice and I've like tagged the
I
chapters.
bet.
These ones have to go into Downfall, not word for word, but you started this because when I wrote the stuff too, I'll admit to anyone listening, I didn't have a clue what I was doing with those chapters. I just like, let's come up with something creative and I'll figure it out in a year when I write this next
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But that's the way I think, and I've never got to the point where I've been bored so far, but I think that's the way it just mentally stimulates me of saying, okay, I've thrown my characters into this situation now. It's like, how am I getting them out? I hadn't thought
Mhm.
about how to get them out. I know where they need to be at the end of the book. Great. but I have 40,000 words to get them there, and they're stopped. How are they jumping over this wall? It's
Right.
the fun part of writing.
It is. I love getting my characters into a pickle, and then I
Mhm.
have to chew on it for a few days to figure out how am I going to get them out of there, and what's a fun way to get them out of there. How can I do it in an interesting way that is, propels the plot forward? Or I love it when your characters surprise you. That's my favorite part, and the thing that drives my non-writing friends crazy. They're all like, "What? How can your characters surprise you?" Because I'll be writing alone. They're like, "Aren't you writing them?" I'm like, "Yeah, but then." They take a right turn instead of a left turn. And then I'm like,
Exactly.
I love that part, that process of
Yeah.
creativity. I feel like that's what I love. I think that even that kind of stuff is why I keep writing, because I love that development and I love even figuring out what makes you happy with certain things. I was writing a different book altogether that I had a character and I just gave her this funny little mannerism, but it makes me so happy every time I
There, yeah.
get to that point. And I love that kind of joy. When you find these little sparks of these things that make you happy about your the mystery, the writing, the plot, the character, or their past. I just think that's something to really pay attention to. And I
Mhm.
love it when I make myself crack up because I'm very funny. And so I always like my kids are like, are you making yourself laugh again? Are you laughing at your own jokes? I'm like, I am. I totally am. And then, or if you make yourself sad, they have
Yeah.
one book that I was had a character die in a book that was like kind of, it wasn't unexpected for me, but I wrote a chapter that ended up being beautiful.
Mhm.
And so I was getting all teary eyed. And one of the kids, it was Brian, walked in. And he's like, "What happened?"
What's going
No,
on?
it's okay. It's okay. I just read the most beautiful chapter. Like,
That's hilarious.
but I love it. I mean, I feel like that's the stuff of life, right? That
Yeah,
makes
it
you
is. I
makes
was
you
actually talking to
happy.
someone recently about the whole process, and they're like, I don't know how you do it. I'm like, I don't know how I couldn't do it at this point. Like, it's part of me living my life is telling stories, whether 5 people buy them or 5 million people buy them. That's important to me, sure. That's why I bust my ass and try to
Yep.
market and do all the stuff I have to do. But that's not the end goal. The end goal for me, and I've said it before in other interviews, and it comes across when I say it as being selfish, but
Mhm.
I write stories for myself. If I laugh or I get sad and I write something that moves me, I accomplished what I was trying to do by that. Because it's
Definitely.
very much like if I don't know how people, I know they do it. I know people write for a living and they just, I have to write this story, I'm paid to write this story or whatever it is. But if you don't believe what you're writing, you don't enjoy those characters, you're not bought hook, line, and sinker into that story, this would suck. This would suck to have to tell a story that you don't really care that much about. Because I'm trying to do it because someone's going to pay me X, Y, and Z. That's terrible.
Mhm.
No, no
Mhm.
way. So,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah,
And I think there's a lot of people that they want to they're basically shooting to be a one-hit wonder.
sure.
And the problem with that is it's really hard to actually do that. It's hard to, and even when it is something that you really want to do and you're built to write, like such as a
Hmm.
person, such as yourself, um, you probably won't create a great book. And I found this study that was talking about creativity, and it was a potter that teaches this pottery class,
Okay.
and he gives this exercise. So for half the class he says your goal is to make the perfect bowl. The
Hmm.
other half of the class is to make as many bowls as you possibly can in this 5 hours.
Hmm.
And they go about this task, and the interesting thing is that in the class that had given the idea to make one bowl, there were no perfect bowls at
Hmm.
all. And in the ones that were charged with making as many as they can, there were many. There are many perfect bowls in it. And
Yeah.
I think that's actually freeing for those of us, especially new writers, where
Mhm.
you're maybe just figuring this out for the first time and you're over editing because you're scared
Yeah.
and you're not, have a hard time writing the end. And 96% of writers don't write the end.
Right.
I'm always like, write the end. You can edit later,
Yeah.
more, but you have to get to the end. And I think that idea is a little freeing. You don't feel like in the moment I have to create perfection.
Hmm.
It's just keep creating.
Keep creating, right.
And
Well,
yeah,
you can't fix something that you haven't completed. So, I mean, you could edit the rest of your life and get 10 chapters done and just keep going back to chapter one and fixing again. But if you get
that's
that
what
full book
happens.
done, even if it's crap, you can
Mhm.
fix crap.
Hmm.
maybe, or you can pay someone to fix crap, or you can
Right.
ghostwrite crap to get rid of. You can find a way to get rid of it. But if you don't do it, you don't
Hmm.
have anything.
Yeah, you don't come to some kind of conclusion to
Yeah.
then move from there. You just keep spiraling. Yeah,
Yeah.
agree.
And just that sense of accomplishment. I've said this many times on podcasts, we're talking to other people. Um, Probably because, and I don't dislike what I do for a living. So, boss, if you're listening to this, I like my job. So, no. But my job is my job, and I enjoy it. It provides a good life for me and my family. I don't ever wake up in the morning and go, I do not want to go to work today. But there's a difference with all these books that are behind me. My job will end at some point, and it's a finance job. So when my job ends, my company's not going to give me something and say, here's what you've done for the last 25 years. And you have a copy and you can look at it. All my
Mhm.
stuff, I'm not an architect. I didn't, I'm not George Costanza faking that I, designed the Guggenheim or any of these things. I there's nothing left. Obviously, I've had a life and I've had a house and family and all that stuff I've been able to provide for them, but there's no thing that I can say, here, kids, this is
Mhm.
what I have accomplished with my life. But with the books, I can. The books
Yep.
hopefully will outlive me. That my grandkids or my great grandkids will, flip open one of the books and they'll be like, great granddad said the F word a few times in this chapter. We'll be like, yeah, that's the way the
It
characters were
happened.
talking. I don't know what to tell you. So, or whatever line they catch on to me, that legacy side of it is
Yeah.
pretty darn exciting that you're going to leave something behind that a future generation can find. And I always tell this to people no matter what. It's like whether you realize or not, when you're writing a story, you're leaving part of your soul in that story. You're leaving
Hmm.
a little bit about yourself. Maybe you don't even realize it. Maybe it's subconscious that you're giving a character one of your traits. You
Hmm.
like, I have a character, Troy Evans. Troy likes pizza with pepperoni and jalapenos.
Hmm.
Secret. I like pizza with pepperoni and jalapenos. So I give that to Troy. And anytime I'm reading through one of his stories and he's ordering a pepperoni pizza, my heart smiles a little bit and says, "Hey, that's right. I forgot I put that in that I like that too." So,
Yeah.
which I have to point out one thing because we're going to talk about the Hindenburg Spy. You're gonna give um, you're going to give the goods on it. But I didn't get very far into it, but I have started it and I'm going to enjoy reading it this next month. I just got through another project. Um, your prologue, I'm not going to read the whole prologue, but the last line of your prologue, whether it's meant to be or not, and I'm sure it is, ties back to my favorite show, which is Seinfeld, and Oh,
Hmm.
the Humanity, which I
Hmm.
think you know which episode that is.
Yes.
Okay. Soon as I read that, I was just like, oh, I literally watched Newman say that. I was watching it with my daughter after Christmas, so it's been in the last multiple weeks that he was in his mail truck with the fire after he went over the sewing machine and he's screaming, "Oh, the humanity." And when I read that, I was just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, but
I love starting with that line.
well, and it's so interesting because a lot of people don't know that's where it came from. They just
Right.
thought it was a saying.
They thought it was a Seinfeld episode. Exactly.
I'm like,
Exactly.
nope.
Jerry Seinfeld stole and Larry David stole every idea. Don't worry.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 That was the actual radio transmission. So they at the end, because that was what made the crash so spectacular. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a huge, fiery, like scary crash that's
Mhm.
on par with like the Titanic. But we'd had worse disasters, airship disasters than that. But it was caught right on the newsreel.
Mhm.
So it was up close and personal, like for the whole country, the whole world. So
Yeah.
that had never happened before. So that was wild. It's a wild, wild ride for sure.
Yeah. Um, I'm totally drawing a blank. What was the building that they thought at one point was going to be used to dock with the
The
ship?
Empire State Building.
Yeah, Empire State Building. Yeah, I think probably when I went there one of the times I
Yeah.
read the thing about it, whatever, and it's just
But
like,
yeah, the wind shear would have been something else.
yeah, you think about the concept behind that. It's like, holy cow, that'd be like landing a
Amazing to
plane
go
on
in the
like
snow.
a
Yeah. Yeah. And
very
I think
narrow
what,
mountaintop.
like going down ropes or something? Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought
But
about
they
that when you told me what the book was going to be about, and you sent me months ago. I got an initial preview on it, and I'm kind of like, I thought back to that moment. And I was like, can you imagine like trying to take those things and land them on top of near a skyscraper? It's like,
yeah,
holy cow!
was massive. You know that we are so used to like the Goodyear blimp, but
Right.
these dirigibles is what they were called
Yep.
were massive. They were like you think about how big a 747 is, right?
Hmm.
And it's so huge. But the length of it was three 747s in a
Yeah.
row. It was more the size of the Titanic.
Mhm.
And we always think too, I think I did too. I always am used to the Goodyear blimp, what they have the little carriage at the
A
bottom,
little
which is
carriage
where
at the
the
bottom.
people are.
Yeah.
But that is the control car, was similar on the Hindenburg, but there was a
Right.
huge level in it that was all for the passengers. And so
Mhm.
everybody had berths, there were dining car, there's a dining lounge, there's a bar, there was a smoking room, even though it was full of hydrogen and
Yeah,
they had
it's a
to
good,
vacuum seal
that's a
the
great
door.
idea.
I know. And I have my protagonist thinking about that as she's boarding the Hindenburg. She's like, because it's only a 48-hour trip. It was the fastest way to get across the Atlantic. All
Mhm.
of the liners, ocean liners, the quickest you could get was about 4 or 5 days.
Right.
Um, so this was just 2 days, given that if it was good weather. So it was really fast, but also very gentle. If you had a and been in an air balloon at all, the liftoff and whatnot is just really easy and
Mhm.
smooth. And also there's a part to it, the trip, that I always think we did lose when we don't do that kind of travel anymore. And
Mhm.
that they floated over the whole of Europe from Frankfurt all the way across, and then the southern tip of Greenland, and then across the ocean. And you could raise and lower the level depending on like if you were going over some interesting sites. And so they
Mhm.
would go over these beautiful parts of the continent, and they could go up and down and
Mhm.
leisurely look at it and enjoy it. And even then, Pan Am did have Clipper service possible between America and England, but they're waiting for England wouldn't let them land yet because they're trying to get their air service up to speed. But
Mhm.
even my protagonist is like, she can feel that speed coming, where it's like that always trumps
Yeah.
this luxurious beauty. And so I do think you can kind of feel the loss on a lot of different levels with that. But
Mhm.
yeah, that thing was huge. And there was so much about it that was interesting to research and write about it, especially trying to figure out a cat and mouse chases around it and
Mhm.
figure out all the research behind it because there's so many conspiracy theories about it.
Yeah,
So
there's a ton of it. Yeah, that's the one that is always has made the news, obviously, because of the spectacular,
yeah,
way it stopped being
yeah.
usable.
I know. And
So,
my characters, I have actually real passengers in the book, and the captain's names and whatnot, but my characters are fictitious. But I I think my theory's right. You'll have
hey,
to read it and figure it out. But
if
I think I'm actually right.
you're gonna have a theory, believe it. Well, I have a theory and go, well, this is totally wrong, but I'm gonna tell people this is my theory. It's like, no, own your theory,
Mhm.
and maybe
It's
you're
more
right with it.
possible.
Well,
More
that's
possible.
one of the things I love about your series is blending fiction, but also having the fact in there. And I
Mhm.
think that's what I know when I'm reading stories and it's a time period or it's an event that I'm interested in, to have those nuggets in there, especially if they know anything, if they've ever been to New York, if they've ever seen the
Mhm.
Chrysler Building, they've ever seen, Grand Central, and to be able to then have characters running through it and stuff. It just
Mhm.
always to me pulls the reader in. It gives them a little bit ownership in the story because they're like, "Oh, I've been there, or I've
Mhm.
done that." So it's like when you in Grand Central, you got the whispering corner where you can go in one corner and the other, and you can be
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
you say something just tiny, tiny, and the other person hears you. First time I got to do that, I'd heard about it, read about it, but I was like, "That's so cool," that's actually a real thing, and I'm sure they
Yeah.
get tired of all the tourists that do it over the last,
Nah.
multi decades.
As
But
long as you don't get in our way, we're cool
yeah,
with it.
exactly. So. Actually, I don't remember when did I go to Grand. Oh, I went to Grand Central last. It's been 3 years now. It's the last time I've been to the station. So, I keep saying I'm going to go back. I went back 3 years ago. I think I messaged you, and you were out of the town or you had something
Yeah.
going on. But I
Yeah.
came to. I had tickets to see Bono at the Beacon
Oh,
Theater.
right, right. I remember that.
Yeah, so I came in just for a weekend. I was supposed to have dinner with friends. They ended up not being able to make it that Friday night in Lower Manhattan. So I forget where I went, but I went. So I just jumped online. I was like, "What am I going to do tonight?" I'll go have dinner. And John Fogerty happened to be playing at Radio City Music Hall,
Nice.
and it was a last minute thing. And I went on StubHub or whatever, and for like I don't know, 70, $80, I got a ticket like corner, so it was a little bit off center stage, but it was like 15 rows back. And I'm
Classic
like,
going that. And that's such a
"Hey."
theater. It's huge. It's
Oh,
so cool. Yeah.
and then I got a ticket for Wicked the next day because I had like matinee time before Bono was talking on the Saturday night. So I went and saw Wicked, and same thing. I think I was third row on that, and it was obstructed view. It was the far left seat,
Right.
but like no, second row because I literally could have reached up and then tapped on the stage.
And
And it was just
that's
this
awesome.
cool experience. Ended up taking the kids when the traveling show came to Greenville a couple months later because I was like, what a fun play. So my daughter and I are going to see Les Mis on
Ooh, lovely, Miss.
in 3 nights. So that's my favorite one. I took my mom to see it in London when we went this last trip.
Mm,
I think this will be my sixth time I've seen it. So it's the first play I ever saw in my life in London in 1996. Long time ago, kids.
so
So
powerful though. I love that play. That's the other funny thing about New York is like you meet people with all these wild jobs. One of my first
mhm.
friends that we made here used to play in Les Mis, is the lead. And I
Wow,
can't think of the name, is escaping me suddenly. And then another friend who is a seamstress for The Lion King.
that's
I
cool.
was like, these jobs are crazy. Like you can do that. Like I just was so
Yeah.
used to, different. I don't know. It's just fascinating to me the different
Well,
kinds of jobs people have here. I love it.
yeah, and when people that don't know the culture and understand stuff like that is it's especially like the traveling shows. It's a traveling circus. I mean,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
bring everything with them. They come in semis and
Yep.
they play for
I have
5 or 6
friends that
nights.
do that now. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
It's
Yeah.
like the experience you had with, managing a band,
Mhm,
I've been
mhm,
fortunate to see what the bands look like behind the scene and do some traveling with
mhm.
them. And it's a traveling circus is the best way to describe it. But it's chaos, but not really because it's organized,
Yeah.
especially the ones that are run well. It's a
Mhm.
fine-tuned, it's really not chaos. It's a fine-tuned machine is what it really is. Um,
Right.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it's fascinating. Well, there's so many avenues to go in life. And I think so often we limit ourselves. And obviously life happens in certain situations you are where you are. But I always try to encourage people and say that doesn't mean that's where you have to be.
Mhm.
I'm in that stage right now where I'm here. Son's graduated now. My daughter's got about 3.5 years and she'll be graduated. And I've never wanted to live my whole life in Western North Carolina. So
Mhm.
I got a 3.5 years to figure out my exit plans. Like, what's the next evolution? I'd love the evolution to be, oh my goodness, I got a 9-figure streaming deal and I own an island in Fiji. But I know the reality of how the numbers work and the likelihood of stuff. I can't count on that. So I might have to figure out plan B.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe.
Maybe, maybe. Or I break the trend, but yeah, but you know what? And again, though, like we talked about before and stuff, if your motivation is fill in the blank on the big name author or the person that got the movie deals and
Right.
their shows are on Amazon or Netflix or whatever, if that's your goal getting into writing, you're almost guaranteed that you're gonna be disappointed.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
so hard to have that happen. And I don't buy into the luck theory that that's how it
Hmm.
happens. But the way that you can put yourself in the position intentionally is very difficult to do
Hmm.
without a lot of other factors coming into play. So again, I circle back to people and say, do this because you love to do this, not because you think you're going to hit the jackpot.
Yes. Very good advice.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Um, how fun was it to write this fourth novel in the series and give us a little preview of but we know Lane's had to get on the Hindenburg because she couldn't bring everyone, but what's
Yeah.
going on with Lane with book four?
I love this book. It's my favorite one so far. I knew I wanted a high concept novel, so I love the idea that even if you've never heard of me or the time period or anything, you
Mhm.
know exactly what's going to happen, and
Yeah.
I love that idea. And I also wanted to show the side of the Hindenburg that was so interesting to me, the whole cruise ship idea of it and the elegance. And then she also takes a really interesting trip to I got to get her to Frankfurt.
Hmm.
And so she goes through Paris, and then I actually have her meet Josephine Baker.
Hmm.
And so there's a scene at Josephine's famous nightclub there, Chez Josephine, and that whole dialogue is just so much fun. I love Josephine Baker, and I figured, becomes a spy in World War II, which is coming down the tracks, and I thought she would be such a good person to give Lane advice because Lane is going to infiltrate the Hindenburg and try to figure out. They know this is not a spoiler or anything, but they know there's something going shady going down on the Hindenburg, and they think there's a hit involved, and so Lane is familiar with the main villain that they're suspecting, so that's why she's got to go. So Josephine was divine to write about, and
Hmm.
most of her words she shares in the dialogue with Lane are actually her own words. I
Hmm.
used them from her quotes during history,
Hmm.
and she's just so inspiring. And I love that's another hallmark of what I love to do is bringing in cameos of people that really are in the circles of LaGuardia and Lane and
Hmm.
Churchill comes in again. He had a cameo in another one of my other books.
Hmm.
I've got a lot of different ones. Oh, and then jazz is the I always have some kind of art form in the back of all of my books, and
Hmm.
this one is jazz. So there's some scenes on Swing Street, which is on 52nd Street
Hmm.
in Manhattan, of course, Josephine Baker. I have some scenes at the Savoy. So you get, oh gosh, there's a great scene with Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald and Smack Henderson. And there's just a lot of really great music. And I think that also gives you a feel for the history and the
Yeah.
story versus a sterile history book, you know? And so I love that. All of that was really fun. And I love the character arcs. You get to find out, you can totally read the book as a standalone, but if you have followed the characters, I give a lot of I finished off the backstory for a couple of the
Hmm.
main side characters that are just real interesting and that
Hmm.
I love a lot. So I toy with villains that are all bad. I toy with villains that are good and bad.
Yeah.
A little bit of gray. And I like
Hmm.
complicated. I like
Yeah.
it when people are complicated. And
Well, we are complicated.
yeah.
So if you write single dimension, like, oh, like the bad guys, especially, one of the
Mm-hmm.
greatest compliments I had ended up getting maybe a year after The Body Man came out was someone had messaged me or however they got in touch with me and said, I was rooting for this one particular character, one of the bad people in the book. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, I was sad when he died. I really want, even as horrible as the stuff he did, I wanted him to make it. And then I kind of realized I was probably a little better at it than I thought, than my, imposter syndrome kicked in. It's like, okay, I was able to make a bad guy who killed people still likable. Not that that doesn't take away from the bad things he did at all, but
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't just this one-dimensional, I'm gonna kill someone or I believe on this side and everyone else can, go to hell and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. That's boring. Like anytime I read books where they've got the very, where it's a Islamic terrorist character and he's doing this and that and it's like really he doesn't have any other like side to him. There's no other thing going on. Can't you be a little more creative? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. I love when you can root for somebody. I think that's the only books I'm ever, even with really good writing, but just my personal preference is if you don't have anybody to root for, I also lose interest too. Like the plot
Mhm.
would be interesting and I want to kind of find out what happens. But I think
Yeah.
that goes back to that caring about it.
Yeah.
Even if there's runs that you don't like, it doesn't mean likable. But
Hmm.
there's something weird, there's something funny or nuanced about that. How you root for them is fascinating, like how
Yeah.
that comes across, both good and negative people. Yeah, interesting.
Well, you've got to have a good plot for sure, like you mentioned earlier, but you have to have characters that people embrace. That's
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're going to write a series. If you're
Mm-hmm.
going to write a series, but
True.
people, I mean, there's big name store line, series out there that I started reading and I got several books in and I realized I don't like the protagonist. Like this
Mm-hmm.
person's, I just can't root for them. The whatever it might be. And again, it's so subjective. What bothers me, someone else might be like coolest person ever.
Right, right.
Whatever. So I don't read their books anymore because it's like, no, I'm not going to invest 6, 7, 8 hours of my time to a story that I know is going to focus on this one character, and I don't like them. I hope they die in the first chapter, but they're not going to because they got a 4 book deal and they have to make the last chapter to then be in the first chapter of the next one. So that's what I try to do with my own characters too. It's like, okay, not that everyone's gonna like my books. I fully understand how it works, but it's like try to write people that that like I killed someone in Supreme Justice, and I got messages like you killed this person, and I'm like, I needed that to happen, not just for this book, but for like 8 books from now, when I get to the point where I'm like, I need a fire to be lit under this person's rear end. Oh, they're
Right,
gonna remember that death,
right.
just stuff like that. You kill your darlings sometimes, which you do it
Yeah,
hopefully carefully and not too often, or you'll have no more darlings left.
right.
And if people don't like that, ooh, good. You probably did a good job with it. Then you probably built that person up to then when you take them down, that they're very disappointed. So
Totally.
yeah.
Totally true.
Before we end, And I've got this is when I will actually look at my notes because you do, oh, the surprise one. I never got to it. We got so lost in it. I didn't realize you came out with this book called Brass. Creativity is for all of us. Stop sleepwalking through life. Fight to
Yeah.
keep creative. So in 30 seconds, what the heck was that? Why did I not know? No, you wrote a book like years before I met you.
Well, I had developed these workshops because it came from when I
Okay.
was telling you about when I started taking writing seriously.
Hmm.
I had more people that were like, "You are so happy, like developing this writing." I remember when I used to, and then fill in the blank, everybody had some kind of creative pursuit
Yeah.
from, playing an instrument or brewing beer was my favorite one, to crocheting, to writing, to like film design and all sorts of stuff. And it tends to get on the back burner. And I think
Yeah.
I developed some of these talks in that book out of why do we put it on the back burner
Hmm.
when it's so important to our souls, to
Hmm.
how we run as a human being. And
Yeah.
I liken it to a car in that you can put all of your effort into just filling it up with gas and changing the tires because those are the urgent versus the important, that old battle. But if you don't take care of the oil and the maintenance on the car, you're going to crack the engine. And so you're going to have a bigger problem there. And I feel like that is where creativity is misunderstood and maybe misrepresented in our life because it seems like it could be just a hobby. And we say
Hmm.
things like that. It's just a hobby. And I'm
Hmm.
like, I think it's more important than that. So I
Yeah.
like this. I give some of these classes on the psychology of creativity
That's
and how
awesome.
to you have to fight to keep creativity alive.
Yep.
It's not an easy thing to put to
Mhm.
the front burner. But
Correct.
when you do, then it's blast. It's really
I
fun.
think, and obviously, I know you're biased. I'm completely biased because we write novels, but I think when you follow your passion, follow what you're creative about, it makes you a happier person. When
Yeah.
you're just putting the, little cog in the wheel and you're just doing
Mm-hmm.
your thing each day and you're coming home and you're eating dinner and you're sitting down watching Netflix and you get up in the morning and you go get on the train and go to work and do the next thing again and you're not having any creative outlet or so rare that I get a night once every couple months to go do something fun.
Mm-hmm.
Life short. Life
Mm-hmm.
short. So if there's something that you're passionate about, you might not be very good at it, but if you work towards it, you might get good at it. Or you might suck and you might never get good at it. That's okay
Yeah.
too, because if it brings you joy, who cares?
Yes, the enjoyment part is huge.
Yes.
Humans tend to want to monetize everything, especially
Right.
this day and age.
Especially nowadays.
And it's
Yeah.
like, I do this or I do this, and they wait until they have some kind of level of perfectionism to it before they do it. I'm like, just do it because you enjoy it. Human
Right.
beings are meant to sing, dance, create, do stuff. So even
Yep.
if you do things that are crafty or musicy or dancey, it feeds us. It gives back in a way that other things don't. And I do think we have trivialized that
We
instead of
have.
being something like breathing. Like it's
Yeah.
important to our humanity.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Completely agree. And then we might have to come back and have you talk about this because it's not out till end of the year. The Lost Stories comes out in November.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
I think
Next
we'll just leave that
holiday.
one as a preview of next time we can
Good.
talk. It'd be a good reason to talk again. So
Yeah.
because we don't want to give that away because it's got a minute and we want it fresh on people's mind when they can actually go out and buy it. So
I love it. Sounds good.
where can everyone go and get a copy of the Hindenburg Spy, my friend?
It's on all of the online bookstores. So, any of your favorite local bookshop, bookshop.org to Barnes and
Lock
Noble,
me in. There you
all
go.
of them. Yep. The Hindenburg Spy. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun, as
Great to
always.
have you. And
Yeah.
maybe it won't be 6 more years and we'll see each other, however long however many years it's been. Let's try to like remedy that at some point before we get too old.
Sounds
So
good. I love it.
thanks, Lori.
All right. Thank you for having me.